In the summer of 1932, as the United States struggled through the Great Depression, thousands of American war veterans made their way to Washington, D.C. They did not come in anger, and they did not come to fight. They came because they had run out of options. These were men who had served in World War I. Many had crossed the Atlantic as young soldiers, endured trench warfare, gas attacks, and months of uncertainty, and then returned home, believing their sacrifice would be remembered. Instead, more than a decade later, many found themselves unemployed, homeless, and standing in bread lines alongside millions of other Americans. In 1924, the U.S. government had promised World War I veterans a service bonus. The money was meant to be paid as a form of delayed compensation, but there was a condition. Veterans would not receive it until 1945. At the time, this seemed reasonable. By 1932, it felt impossible. For veterans with families to feed and no work to be found, waiting another 13 years was not an option. So they marched. Nearly 17,000 veterans, many accompanied by their wives and children, traveled to the nation's capital. Some came by train. Others walked for days. A few hitchhiked. Together, they formed the Bonus Expeditionary Force, later known as the Bonus Army. They were not armed. They made no threats. Their demand was simple: pay the bonus early so they could survive. When they arrived in Washington, the veterans established camps in several areas, the largest along the Anacostia River. Using scrap wood, metal sheets, and whatever materials they could find, they built temporary shelters. Despite the harsh conditions, the camps were organized. They set up kitchens, elected leaders, and enforced rules to maintain order. Observers noted the discipline of the camps. These were not chaotic encampments. They reflected the structure and responsibility many veterans had learned during military service. Across the country, newspapers reported on the growing presence of the Bonus Army. Public reaction was divided. Many Americans sympathized with the veterans, viewing their request as reasonable. Others, particularly in positions of power, saw the camps as a potential threat. Inside the White House, concern turned into fear. President Herbert Hoover and members of his administration worried that the veterans' presence could lead to unrest or violence. Some officials claimed the movement was being influenced by radical groups, although investigations found little evidence to support these fears. When Congress voted against early payment of the bonus, many expected the veterans to leave. Instead, thousands stayed, hoping continued pressure would change the outcome. What followed became one of the most controversial decisions of Hoover's presidency. On July 28, 1932, Hoover ordered the U.S. Army to remove the remaining veterans from Washington, D.C. The operation was placed under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, the Army's Chief of Staff. Assisting him were officers named Dwight D. Eisenhower and George S. Patton, men who would later become central figures in American military history. That afternoon, soldiers advanced toward the camps. They carried bayonets. They deployed tanks. Tear gas filled the streets. These soldiers were not confronting a foreign enemy. They were facing American veterans, many wearing old uniforms, medals pinned to worn jackets, standing alongside their families. The removal quickly escalated. Veterans were driven out. Camps were set on fire. Families fled with whatever belongings they could carry. Several people were injured as the camps burned behind them. Photographs of the destruction appeared in newspapers across the nation the following day. Images of smoke rising over Washington, of homeless veterans wounded by gas and force, deeply disturbed the public. Public opinion turned sharply against President Hoover. For many Americans, the image of the U.S. Army attacking its own veterans symbolized a government that had lost touch with its people. Later that year, Hoover suffered a decisive defeat in the presidential election. But the impact of the Bonus Army did not end there. In 1936, Congress passed legislation to pay World War I veterans their bonus early, overriding a presidential veto. While the payment came too late for some, it represented a recognition of past failure. The incident also reshaped how the United States treated its veterans. It influenced future policies and helped lay the groundwork for the GI Bill, ensuring that veterans of later wars would receive education, housing, and financial support. Today, the story of the Bonus Army remains one of the most sobering chapters in American history. It is a reminder that service does not always guarantee security, and that a nation's responsibility to its veterans does not end when war is over. The Bonus Army did not come to Washington to make history. They came to survive. But in doing so, they forced America to confront a difficult truth, one that still echoes today.